Hey, this is John with Hidden Level Audio. Recently we took a look at Ujam's Brute, a very heavy hitting drum program.
I've been getting the question on how to route the E-drums through Brute.
So you can play your E-drum kit and have Brute be the sounds for it. It's a really cool thing to do. Once you get it working, it sounds awesome. So here's the drum kit with the Rollin' Brain. This is what we need to set the MIDI notes from to trigger Brute. Standard 5-pin MIDI cable on the output of the Brain. I'm going to take a look inside the menu of the Roland here. Scroll down and find all the MIDI options. These are the MIDI notes for all the instruments. And this is the MIDI channel that the whole instrument is coming out of. As you can see here, it's plugged into MIDI port 1 on the MIDI port. This is an 8x8 MIDI interface. Go up to Pro Tools up here. Look at the MIDI input for Brute. You look, you see MIDI port 1, channel 5. So what you're going to want to do is assign each instrument out of the proper MIDI note that aligns up with Brute. Alright, so the way you get this to work is you notice that the kick drum on Brute says it's MIDI note C1. That one actually already lines up. So the snare would be D1 according to Brute. And that one also lines up. Then Tom 1 is not lining up. It's hitting C2 on the piano roll. It needs to hit Brute's A1. At this point, you need to go into the options of your MIDI module. Scroll to where you get your MIDI note options. See here, our Tom 1 is coming out of C3. It needs to be hitting Brute's A1. Our module is an octave higher than what Brute wants, so we need to put ours down to A2. Typically, when you hit an instrument, it will bring up the options for that particular instrument. So once again, our A2 is Brute's A1.
A2.
So there you have it. Now that lines up. Now Tom 2. Right now, Tom 2 is coming out of the same MIDI note Tom 1 is. So we need to get back into the options, send Tom 2 out of our G2, which would be Brute's G1.
G2.
Tom 1 and 2 are coming out of their appropriate MIDI notes. And Tom 3 is already aligned. F2 on our module, F1 inside of Brute. Now kick, snare, and the toms are all routed properly. Now let's come over here to the hi-hat where we have the edge and the bow. We want the edge to be assigned as an open hi-hat, and that will be an A# 2 on our module, and that will line up with A# 1 in Brute. And there's A# 2 for the edge. And for the bow, we want a closed hi-hat sound. So we need to find F# 2 on the module, which will line up with F# 1 inside of Brute. And there you have it. Now you have an open and closed sound for the hi-hat. The next thing we are going to look at is the crash cymbals. Crash cymbal 1 is going to be C# 3 on the module, and that will align with C# 2 inside Brute. And it was routed that way with factory settings. Factory settings for Crash 2 is A3, and that lines up with A2 in Brute. And the last thing we need to take a look at is the ride cymbal. And lucky for us, the ride cymbal came out of D# 3 out of the factory, lining up with Brute's D# 2. So once those are all aligned, the whole drum kit should work. Each drum kit is going to be a little different on how you get to the MIDI options, but overall the idea is the same for all the different drum kits. My drum module is a Roland TD4, and it's pretty easy to get in there and go into the options and adjust what instrument comes out of what MIDI note. Some drum modules are just going to have the MIDI note number. For instance, C2 on my module is going to be number 36, and it just goes up from there. Once again, my module is an octave higher than what Brute says. Cake is C1. For me, on my module is C2. That's just something to keep aware of. Thanks again for checking out how I routed my drums through my module to Brute. Once you get all that working, it'll be really awesome. It's very responsive. It sounds killer. Thanks again. I'm John with Hidden Level Audio. Check us out on all the social medias. Later.